There are places in this world where the darkness is different. Not the darkness of a city with the lights off, not the darkness of your bedroom at 3 in the morning. A different kind of dark. The kind that has been sitting in the same place for 10,000 years. The kind that has weight to it. The kind that presses against you when you walk into it. The kind that knows you're there before you even step into it. The Appalachian Mountains are one of those places. People have lived in these hills for generations. Quiet people, practical people, people who don't scare easily and don't talk about things they can't explain. These are not people who sit around inventing ghost stories. These are people who wake up before dawn, work hard, come home, and don't waste their breath. But every now and then, something happens out there that breaks a person. Something they carry for the rest of their lives. Something they can't unsee, can't unhear, can't explain no matter how many years pass. And the thing about these mountains is, the stories don't stop. They never stop. New ones surface every few years from different counties, different families, different decades. And they follow the same patterns, like whatever is out there has been doing this for a very long time. Like it knows exactly what it's doing. Tonight, I have 3 of those stories. All of them real, all of them from people who had no reason to make anything up, and all of them set in the same ancient mountains that have been keeping secrets far longer than any of us have been alive. Story 1. The Figure at Breaks Interstate Park. My name is not important. What is important is that I am a park ranger. I have been a park ranger in the Virginia and Kentucky border region for 11 years. I have spent more nights alone in those mountains than I can count. I have seen black bears up close. I have heard bobcats scream in the dark and felt my heart drop into my stomach. I have found people lost on trails at midnight, disoriented and dehydrated, barely holding together. I know what this wilderness looks like. I know what it sounds like. I know what belongs in it. What I saw on the night of September 14th, 2021, does not belong in it. Breaks Interstate Park sits right on the Virginia-Kentucky border. Most people have never heard of it. It is one of those places that gets overlooked because it sits between 2 states and belongs fully to neither. It contains the deepest gorge east of the Mississippi River. The Russell Fork River carved that canyon over millions of years, nearly 1,000 feet straight down in some places. Dense forest on all sides, limited cell service. At night, especially in the off-season, it is one of the most isolated stretches of land in the entire Appalachian range. No crowds, no ambient noise from towns, just the mountain, the dark, and whatever is moving through it. I was doing a routine night patrol, alone as I often was, driving the park road slowly with my window down, listening. Around 2 in the morning, I stopped the truck near the tower's overlook. It is one of the most dramatic viewpoints in the park. In the daytime, you can see for miles. At night, it is just a railing and 1,000 feet of black air. I got out to check the area on foot, standard procedure. The night was cold and completely clear, stars bright overhead, the kind of sky you only see when you're truly away from everything. Not a sound except my own boots on the pavement. I was about 30 yards from the overlook railing when I saw someone standing at the edge. A person standing right at the railing, facing out, looking down into the gorge below. My first thought was a visitor who had wandered in after hours. It happens more than you would think. People camp illegally, people come in after the gates close. I called out, identified myself. No response. The figure did not move. I walked closer, and as I got within 15 yards, I realized something was wrong. The person was standing at the railing, but they were on the outside of it, on the wrong side, facing outward, toes over the edge. 1,000 feet of open air below them. I stopped moving. My training kicked in immediately. You do not rush towards someone in that position. You do not startle them. You speak slowly and you speak calmly, and you keep your voice as neutral as you can. I told them I was a park ranger. I told them I was not going to rush toward them. I told them there was no trouble. I told them I just wanted to talk. The figure turned its head, slowly, toward me, and in the starlight, I saw the face. I don't know how to explain what I saw. I have tried many times since that night. I have tried with my supervisor. I have tried with my wife.
I have tried with a therapist I started seeing 2 months after it happened. None of them have been able to give me a framework that makes it make sense. The face was wrong. Not injured, not distressed, not the face of someone in crisis. Wrong in a way that went deeper than any of that. The proportions were slightly off. The eyes were set a little too far apart. The mouth was a little too wide, like a face that had been assembled from memory by something that had seen human faces before, but had never been one. And then it smiled. A wide, slow smile. The kind of smile that has no warmth in it at all. And it stepped off the edge. I ran to the railing. I screamed into the radio for backup and emergency services. I looked down into the gorge. There was nothing. No sound of impact. The gorge is deep enough that you would hear it if something fell. Rock and water 1,000 feet down. You would hear it. I heard nothing. No movement in the darkness below. No sound at all. Nothing. Search and rescue came within the hour. They searched the gorge floor at first light. They brought in additional personnel. They were thorough. They found nothing. No body, no clothing, no disturbed ground at the base of the cliff. Nothing to indicate that anything had fallen. Nothing to indicate that anyone had ever been standing at that railing. My supervisor reviewed the incident with me. He was professional about it. The official report describes an unknown individual who could not be located following an apparent fall. That is the polite way of saying, we have no idea what I saw. I have worked in these parks for 11 years. I have never requested a transfer. I put in my transfer request the following week. I do not go back to the breaks after dark. I don't think I ever will. There is an old belief in that part of Appalachia that certain places along the ridgelines and gorges are what the old-timers call hollow spots. Places where the boundary between what's real and what isn't gets thin, gets unreliable. Places where things can come through that shouldn't be able to. I spent 11 years in those mountains thinking that was folklore, something people told their children to keep them away from dangerous terrain. I don't think that anymore. I know what I saw at that overlook, and I know that whatever it was, it looked at me before it went over that edge. It looked at me directly, and it smiled like it wanted me to follow. Story 2. The boarding house on Route 23. This story belongs to my uncle. He passed away in 2020 at the age of 71. In the last year of his life, after his diagnosis, he started telling people things he had kept to himself for decades. He said dying had a way of making old secrets feel less important to protect. He said he had kept this one quiet his whole adult life because he was a proud man and a logical man. And what happened to him in the winter of 1987 did not fit inside the life of a proud, logical man. He told it to me quietly at his kitchen table about 4 months before he passed. He told it slowly and carefully, like he was making sure he got every detail exactly right. Because he had been getting it exactly right in his own memory for 33 years. He was driving Route 23 south through Pike County, Kentucky, late November. He had been traveling for work, coming down from Ohio. He had been on the road for hours longer than he planned. It was past midnight, and the weather had turned bad fast. Freezing rain coming down heavy, roads glazing over.
The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in 2 hours. He was tired in the way you get when you've been driving tense for too long. That particular exhaustion that sits in your shoulders and behind your eyes. He knew he needed to stop. He wasn't going to make it to where he was going that night. He saw a light ahead on the right side of the road. A house. A large, old house set back from the road slightly, with an open gravel lot in front. A hand-painted sign near the road. One word: rooms. He pulled in. He said the relief he felt pulling off that road was immediate. He was so tired, he just wanted to be out of the car. He described the house as very old but well kept. 2 full stories, wide front porch with a wooden railing, a few lights on inside, warm yellow light behind the curtains. Looked like someone was awake. He knocked on the front door. A woman answered. Middle-aged, he said. Plain dress, hair pulled back. She looked at him the way someone looks at a traveler who isn't entirely a surprise, like she had been expecting someone to show up eventually. She said yes, she had a room available. $12 for the night. He paid her. She didn't write anything down. She showed him upstairs without much conversation. He said the room was clean and simply furnished. Single bed with a quilt on it. A wooden chair in the corner. A small window looking out over the road and the gravel lot where his car was parked. He could see his own headlights still glowing faintly before they timed off. He didn't even fully undress. He lay down on top of the quilt with his jacket still on. He fell asleep within minutes. He woke up at some point deep in the night. He didn't know the time. No clock in the room. His watch was in his jacket pocket, and he didn't reach for it. The house was completely silent. The freezing rain had stopped. Everything was still. But something had pulled him awake. A sound from the hallway just outside his door. Footsteps. Slow and deliberate. The kind of footsteps that are not trying to be quiet, moving past his door from one end of the hall to the other. He lay still and listened. The footsteps went past his door and continued down the hall. Then they stopped. Silence for a moment. Then they came back, slower this time, and they stopped directly outside his door. He said he could feel the pause. He could feel something standing on the other side of that door in the dark hallway. And then there was a knock. Soft. 3 times. Measured. Even. He didn't answer. He couldn't have told you in that moment exactly why. There was no single rational reason. It wasn't like he consciously decided not to answer. It was more that his body simply did not move. Something in him had already made the decision before his mind caught up. Don't open that door. Don't make a sound. Don't let whatever is out there know you're awake. The knock came again after a long pause. 3 times. Exactly the same as before. Same softness, same spacing, same patience. He lay in the dark without moving and without breathing more than he had to. The floorboards outside his door did not creak. Whatever was standing there was completely still. After what felt like several minutes, the footsteps moved away down the hall. Slow, unhurried, and the house went quiet again. He did not sleep after that. He lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling until the window began to lighten. He left before dawn. He did not want to see the woman again. He did not want to sit at a breakfast table and make small talk and pretend the night had been normal. He did not want any part of whatever that house was in the daylight. He just wanted his car and the road. He left $12 on the bedside table, even though he had already paid. He doesn't know why. He drove east until the sun came all the way up. 3 months later, he was back in that area for work. He had thought about that night dozens of times since it happened. He drove Route 23 south again, watching the right side of the road carefully. He wanted to see the house in the daylight. He wanted a rational explanation. He wanted to be able to say he had imagined it or misremembered, or that everything was completely normal in the light of day. He found the spot where he had pulled in. The gravel lot was still there, but there was no house. There was an overgrown gravel pull-off, and behind it, the remains of a stone foundation, cracked stone and rotted timber, decades of growth covering it, trees growing up through the center of it. He got out and walked the whole perimeter. Based on the size and shape of it, it was exactly the footprint of a large 2-story house. But nothing had stood on that foundation for a very long time, not for decades. He went to a gas station about a mile down the road. The man behind the counter was older, born in the county, knew the area his whole life. My uncle described the property. The man nodded before he even finished, said a boarding house had stood there for years. Busy place once. Burned to the ground in 1954. A bad fire. Started in the middle of the night. 3 guests had been inside. None of them made it out. They were never identified. The owner had died in the fire as well. The man said nobody had built on that land since. Said nobody wanted to. My uncle told me he thought about those footsteps for the rest of his life. He thought about that knock, the patience behind it. 3 soft, even knocks, and then nothing but waiting. He thought about what might have been standing on the other side of that door, what it might have wanted, what might have happened if he had reached over and turned the handle. He said he was grateful every single day that he hadn't. He told me that was the thing that stayed with him more than anything else. Not the house that shouldn't have existed, not the woman who shouldn't have been there. The knock. And the terrible, unhurried patience behind it. Like whatever was out there had all the time in the world, like it had been knocking on that door for 70 years and was perfectly willing to keep knocking. Story 3. The Voice in Buchanan County. I'm going to tell you this story exactly the way it was told to me, directly, without softening it, because the woman who told it to me did not soften it. She sat across from me at her kitchen table in a small house outside of Grundy, Virginia. She had a cup of coffee in front of her that she didn't touch the whole time she talked. She told it to me the same way you'd tell someone the directions to the nearest gas station. Calm, matter-of-fact, certain. Done being afraid of it. Like she had made her peace with it years ago, like she had accepted that it happened, and that she was never going to understand it, and that those 2 things could both be true at the same time. Her name is Loretta. She was 53 years old when I spoke to her. She has lived in Buchanan County her entire life, 4th generation in that same county. She is not a dramatic woman. She does not tell stories for effect. She is not the kind of person who enjoys being the center of attention. She speaks plainly, and she does not exaggerate. I want you to understand that before anything else, because what she described is the kind of thing that is easy to dismiss when you read it written down. It is harder to dismiss when you are sitting across from the person who lived it, and you can see in their face that they are not performing anything. In the summer of 2011, Loretta's teenage son, Marcus, went missing. He was 16 years old. Good kid, she said. Quiet. Liked fishing and being outside. He had gone out on a Saturday morning to a creek about 1.5 miles from their house, a walk he had made hundreds of times since he was old enough to go alone. She didn't think anything of it when he left. By Saturday evening, he hadn't come home. By 10 o'clock that night, people were out looking. By Sunday morning, the community had organized a proper search. Volunteers, local sheriff's deputies, search and rescue. Loretta was part of it from the first light. She could not sit at home. She said the idea of being in her house while her son was out there in those woods was not something she could physically do. She walked those woods calling his name for hours. Her throat was raw by midday. At some point in the late afternoon, she had pulled ahead of the main search group. She was moving through a dense section of forest close to the creek. The trees were thick there, not much light getting through, ground uneven and covered in roots. She was still calling his name every 20 or 30 seconds. Marcus! Marcus! And a voice answered her from deeper in the trees. Her son's voice. Mom! Over here! She moved toward it immediately. She said there was no hesitation, no moment of doubt. That was her son's voice. She had been listening to that voice for 16 years. She knew it the same way she knew her own hands. She called out again. She told him she was coming. She told him to keep talking so she could find him. And the voice answered again. Same voice, same distance away, like no matter how fast she moved, he wasn't getting any closer. She followed that voice for nearly 20 minutes, deeper into the forest, away from the creek, away from the search group, away from every trail she knew. The trees got denser, the light got worse. She said she was so focused on the sound that she wasn't fully registering how far she had come, or how completely alone she was. And then she stopped. She could not explain it fully even years later. There was no single thing that made her stop. The voice was still calling, still sounding exactly like Marcus, still coming from just ahead. But something that lived below thought, below reason, registered as wrong. Not the words, not the sound itself.
Something beneath the sound. Something in the quality of it that her body understood before her mind did. Like the difference between a real fire and a photograph of a fire. Both look like fire, but one of them has no heat. She did not take another step forward. She stood still for a moment, and then she turned around, and she walked back the way she had come. Behind her, the voice kept calling. Her son's voice, growing more urgent now. "Mom! Mom, over here! Mom, I need you!" She did not look back. She did not answer. She kept walking. Her hands were shaking, but her feet kept moving. She walked until she could hear the search group ahead of her. She walked until she saw flashlights through the trees. And then she stopped and stood there and did not say anything to anyone for a long time. Marcus was found the following morning, alive. He had slipped on wet rocks along the creek bank and badly sprained his ankle. He had been sheltering under a rock overhang about half a mile from where he had started fishing. He had been there since Saturday afternoon. He had yelled for help until his voice gave out. Then he had just waited. He had no idea anyone was searching yet. He had not spoken to anyone on Sunday. He had not spoken at all. The direction Loretta had been walking when that voice was leading her was directly away from where Marcus was found, not slightly off, directly opposite. Loretta didn't talk about what happened in the woods for years. She said she didn't have words for it that didn't sound like she had lost her mind. And she said she didn't fully understand it herself. She just knew what she had heard, and she knew what it wasn't. Eventually, she told a woman from her church, an older woman who had grown up in a more remote part of the county, deeper in the mountains. This woman listened to the whole thing without interrupting, and when Loretta finished, she nodded, slowly, like she had heard something like it before. She told Loretta that there are things in the deep forest of these mountains that listen, that wait, that pay attention to what moves through their territory and what it loves, and then they use that knowledge. She said whatever Loretta had followed in those woods had heard her calling her son's name, and it had answered. She said the only reason Loretta was sitting in that church pew telling the story was that something in her knew the difference at the last second, some part of her that was older than reason, older than thought, knew. Loretta told me she believes that. She said she doesn't spend much time trying to figure out what it was. She gave up on that a long time ago. What she thinks about is that moment when she stopped walking. She said she thinks about it almost every single day because she doesn't know where it came from. She doesn't know how she knew. She has no explanation for it. She just knew. And she turned around. She is certain, absolutely certain, that if she had taken one more step forward into those trees, she would not have made it back. She would not have been sitting at that table. She would not have been there to see her son come home. She phrased it exactly like that. And then she picked up her coffee cup, and she didn't say anything else for a long time. The Appalachian Mountains have been standing for more than 300 million years.
The people, the towns, the roads, all of it is brand new to these hills. Whatever was here before us is still here, patient, quiet, watching from the dark places we don't go after the sun goes down. And some of it has learned exactly how to call us in.